morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rajat Mukherjee, and as Director General of Broadband India Forum, I am very pleased to welcome you all to this the second session of our learning series post launch of the Broadband India Forum's Connectivity Accelerator program. The program is built around 4 sub-themes, the first of which was a kickoff session. The second was on business models. This session is on technology. And the final session, we will examine issues around investment. I would encourage each and every one of you to join each of the sessions to get the best out of this accelerator. The Broadband India Forum is a policy think tank dedicated to the spread of broadband for all in a technology neutral. We believe that India, which is a vast country with a vibrant geological ecosystem as well as population, requires many technologies to reach out to every individual. With that in mind, BIF was at the forefront as the WANI developed and showcased to the TRAI back in 2016. Field tests and trials culminated in a recommendation to the DOT, and finally, PM WANI. It is only natural, hence, that we should be put in place this accelerator program to seed the marketplace with this very eminent technological that intends to reach out to each and every citizen. The program has been put in place for the benefit of those innovators and entrepreneurs looking to take up the implementation and rendering of these PM1E services. PM1E as a concept, as a service, and as a facilitator for extending broadband services to all will be covered extensively in these sessions, and the speakers coming after me will be further expanding to provide greater detail on the technology. We are extremely pleased to have the support of the Department of Telecommunications, and we extend our thanks and gratitude to the respected Secretary for the special trust that he has provided and the entire DOT team for their support. It is a personal privilege to me to have with us today Shri UK Srivastava, presently the Director General at the NTIPRIT, who will make a keynote address. NTIPRIT is the National Telecommunications Institute for Policy, Research, Innovation and Training. And as the DG, I am fully aware of the knowledge and experience that you bring. Sir, thank you for joining us today. We would also like to acknowledge the support of Meta in this outreach and the hard work put in by Headstart and the organization of this school. Finally, the role of our president, the redoubtable T.V. Ramachandran, cannot be underestimated. He is responsible for this continued drive to realize this vision of leading those. I invite the entrepreneurs to visit the Connectivity Accelerator website and register for the program. With this brief message, I shall hand over to Mr. Vinayak Hegde, who is going to be moderating today's session. Vinayak, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajat Mukherjee. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the broadband broadband forum for the different sessions, and I'll give just a little bit of intro about the sessions. So we can witness numerous advancements in internet technology in the past decade all over the world, and there are a plethora of technologies which are sprouting to give internet connectivity. In many countries, R&D, research and development projects are underway to provide internet connectivity via high-altitude balloons, not unlike those used to capture weather data, unmanned solar-powered drones, and next-generation wireless routers. Each of these offers higher speeds and more reliability than current modes, plus the obvious benefit, getting the world online all at the same time. To provide internet access to everyone, we need to consider 3 aspects: feasibility, affordability, and quality. The government, academia, think tanks, and research institutions of India have aptly considered these things and made critical policies and progress in many emerging technologies in recent years, right? So with that in mind, we'll have 3 sessions, back to back. The first session is on exploring the frontier technology in the internet connectivity domain. The second focus will focus on the presentation on BIF connectivity accelerator program. And the third one would be on the state-of-the-art technologies leveraged by internet connectivity ventures, right? So with that in mind, I want to start off with the first session, which I just talked about, which is exploring the frontier technologies in the internet connectivity domain, right? So with that, I would hand it to our first speaker, Mr. Gaurav Kharod, who is going to make a presentation on SATCOM technologies. Over to you, Mr. Kharod.
Thank you, Mr. Hegde. So at the outset, let me first thank Broadband India Forum, respected TV sir, Debashish, my dear friend, and everyone at the BIF who have made this happen, and they've invited me here. Despite a little bit of my tantrum that I don't have a lot of time, they've still managed to squeeze me as a speaker up front, despite having other luminaries, especially Mr. Srivastava. So thank you for the opportunity. I will start my presentation on satellite technologies. And though I'm going to be focusing more on the technology aspect of things, I would want to also lace my presentation not just with pure technology, but also the economics and the commercials associated to technology, because without technology being able to meet the right commercials in the market, it's of no real use. So I'm going to set the stage for satellite-based broadband and then move to technologies and a little bit of economics in between. So some of you may have seen some of these numbers. I'll not make you guess what these are. Globally, it has been now found out that a 10% increase in broadband penetration in the country, and this has come from World Bank, McKinsey, etc. It results in a 1.4% approximately growth in the GDP of a country. India's broadband contribution to India's GDP in the year 2020 is around $537 billion, which is in the range of 16 to 18% of our total GDP. And 50% of that comes only through the mobile apps and the digital infrastructure behind and the digital economy behind it. And then 61.06 is the percentage subscribers per 100 population, which still means where broadband has penetrated or internet has penetrated, which still means that we still have a lot of people, a lot of citizens where they need to be digitized and broadband needs to proliferate. These are some of the benefits of satellite and how satellite can complement terrestrial technologies. I'll not go into all the details, but I'll briefly mention. Satellite is an ideal solution for sparsely populated regions. Population density doesn't really matter for satellite. It can be deployed quickly. It's an ubiquitous service. We all know that, high resiliency, etc. So I'll quickly move on to the technology aspects. And this is where the economics comes in. So if you see the horizontal bars on this graph, which are denoted by A, B, C, that's the price point of satellites, because if you see the x-axis, the density in a urban area or a suburban area, rural, as we go towards a remote rural area on the x-axis, the density does not change the cost associated to satellite. And the traditional satellite costs, irrespective of the density on the x-axis, remained at a high level, which is denoted by the line A. But then as technology has come into the satellite industry, over the last several years, we are talking about non-geostationary constellations, LEO, high throughput satellites, software-defined satellites. That price point from A is coming down to B and probably going down towards C as HAPs come in or balloons and drones come in. And therefore, the other lines which are related to terrestrial technologies, there is a price point at which satellite is now able to meet those technologies, and therefore the ability of satellite is now coming to an economic point wherein it's moving towards, earlier it was only towards remote and rural areas, but now technologies in the satellite field are bringing satellite as a technology for broadband delivery towards the suburban areas as newer technologies keep coming in. On the right, I just wanted to quickly give you a glimpse on what is the total satellite capacity in the global telecom market. So in year 2020, the global telecom market had about 2000 terabits per second of capacity available on fiber. As compared to that, satellite was just 3 terabits per second. 99% of the global international data traffic is on fiber because of the disparity between the capacity available. But as time progresses and as new constellations are launched every single day, we will see that the satellite capacity is going to exponentially rise in the next 2 to 3 years or the next 5 years. And therefore, the price per megabit on satellite is going to come down substantially, and therefore the competition to terrestrial technologies. I will try and now move towards the technical aspects. Satellite broadband markets typically were viewed in 3 different segments: in the air, on the ground, and at sea. Satellite broadband delivery in the air and satellite broadband delivery at sea. I think there is not much of terrestrial technology that can come into those areas, because there is you can't really lay fiber or terrestrial networks on those areas. On the ground is where satellite technology is really bringing all the technical advantages to the homes, to the businesses, to community Wi-Fi. And we are talking about PM1E here, which definitely is an area that satellite is now going to address more and more as we progress on the technical aspect. I'm going to divide my this particular slide into 2 halves, left and the right. So typically, till about 2-3 years back, most people thought satellites were all geostationary satellites. So geo is right in the middle. The technology that we are talking today has a lot of nuances right across from the ground terminals that use satellite. And this could be user terminals as well as gateway terminals, going right up to the satellite payload, including the launch vehicles, etc. So I'm going to go from the left to the right on the slide. The left side of the slide shows what is happening on the ground terminal side. So we have a concept of universal modem developing. A lot of the satellite technology today was all proprietary modems. So a modem from one company could not handshake and talk to a modem of another company, unlike in the 3G, 4G, 5G world, where every cell phone can talk to every other switch. I think that's going to change over time. The ESA, which is the electronically steerable antenna, I think that the flat panel antenna with beam shaping, beam forming, I think that's going to be the next big era in satellite ground terminals, which will help the non-GSO constellations deliver huge amount of capacity at an economically viable price point. And then, of course, we have 5G coming in, and we have air-to-ground technology, which is ATG. And then we have DVB-S2X. I'll not go into all the details, but those are the technologies that symbolize where satellite technology for the future is headed towards. And my next slide is going to talk a little bit more about 5G, and that's where I'm going to focus more on the next slide going forward. And on the right side of the slide are the areas where the satellite asset per se, the space asset, and the technology related to that is moving towards. So we already know HTS, high throughput satellites, spot beams, frequency reuse. We have the NGSOs with the medium Earth orbit satellites, the low Earth orbit satellites, which are bringing in a lot more capacity with the constellations that they have. We have the mission extension vehicle, which is a new technology, which is elongating the life of satellites in space. And this is a technology which will therefore reduce space debris. It will help the business economics of a satellite broadband delivery, because earlier most geostationary satellites were used to having a life of 15 to 16 years. Now with this mission extension vehicle, it can be extended by another 5 years or maybe more. And then the latest in the satellite field is the software defined satellite. I'm going to touch upon that in the next slide, and therefore I'll quickly move to the next one. So this is the vision of where the new satellite technology is headed towards. And this is not just technology on the satellite payload. This is a technology change right from ground up all the way to the satellite. And so let me go from the satellite downwards to the Earth. The network vision of the future, based on how satellite technologies are progressing, is a software-defined, multi-layer, multi-orbit 5G network of networks. Let me just explain each one of them. And I'm cognizant of the time. So I will probably end this quickly with this slide and the next one. So the geostationary satellites, which are at 36,000 kilometers above the equator, would be the highest layer in the ecosystem that we envisage as technologies come in. Then we will have the NGSOs, which are the MEOs and the GEOs. In the top layer and in the MEOs and the GEO layer, we will have software-defined satellites where the footprints can be changed, the power on the satellites can be changed, the satellite beam can translate into following the requirement of the end user on the ground. And I think that's going to be a sea change in the next couple of years. This is almost about to be launched. In fact, some players are already announcing software-defined satellites in this field, where all of this will be highly configurable and software-defined. Then we come to the stratosphere, which is the layer just below the, just around the 100-kilometer mark over Earth. And we are already, the industry is talking about HAPS systems, which is high altitude platforms. And each of these HAPS systems could cover a small geography like a city and could have a 5G switch on it. And I think that's the new era of communication from the space. That's going to be very, very exciting. On the ground, we are seeing the public cloud and their private cloud. And all of these, which were so far proprietary in nature for the satellite world, all of these are now moving towards the 5G era and the NTN specifications under the 5G 3GPP version 16-17, where the ground equipment, the modems, the NMS systems, the OSS, BSS that power all these networks on the ground using all these satellites in the sky, these are going to be 5G compliant. And I think that's going to be the biggest change for the industry. As standardization creeps in through 5G and NTN, we will see a lot of network functions which are getting virtualized in the satellite world. And I think that is going to spur a lot of demand on the ground for broadband through the multi-layer, multi-orbit that I've described in the top part. And I'll take one last minute to go through the slide. I'm probably just over time, but allow me half a minute. The three key pillars as we see of this unified architecture, which is likely to develop in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe 2 to 5 years, is the software-defined satellites. These may be GEOs, MEOs, LEOs, but as I said, they will be dynamic and in terms of their design, you can reconfigure the bandwidth, the power on the satellite and on the beam to align with what is required on the ground. The 5G part of the network is going to be critical in standardization, in getting the costs of the remote equipment to a level where satellite modems and satellite networks can start competing with the terrestrial networks in terms of capex on the ground. And then the smart edge terminals. This is where I talked about the flat panel electronically steered antennas and software-defined modems. 5G enabled, software-defined, flat panel, smart edge terminals, which can seamlessly exist not on a rooftop where you need licenses today if you want to put a parabolic reflector on a rooftop, but on the panel of a car, on an aircraft, etc. And I think that's where the vision of new satellite technologies. I have a summary slide, but I'll not mention a lot about it. Satellite exists as a broadband player today. In the future, it is only going to be a bigger broadband player with the new technologies coming. Thank you. I hand over to Mr. Hegde back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaurav Kharod. So as you heard, Gaurav Kharod is the managing sales director for Intelsat, and as you saw in his presentation, he has worked across sales, management, pre-sales, network design, and business development across networks and media markets. We don't have enough time for questions because we are on time. So what we'll do is we'll quickly move on to the second presentation in the session, and that is by Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya. So quick intro about Debashish Bhattacharya. Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya is the Deputy Director General of Broadband India Forum. He has over 3 decades of experience in the sectors of telecom, IT, and broadcasting. And before Broadband India Forum, he has worked as Director Sales and Marketing at Alcatel Lucent Limited, promoting mobile, fixed line and broadband products and solutions and services for telecom service providers. With that introduction, we would like to give the floor to Mr. Debashish to start his presentation on Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E and how it can change the landscape of India. Over to you, Mr. Debashish.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vinayak, for that introduction. Let me start. I would request Vagesh to kindly put up the presentation, but put it on the slideshow mode. And before we start with the presentation, I'd just like to lay a little background to the entire conversation that we are having. So when we talk about connectivity, alternate connectivity technologies, which are going to help in proliferation of broadband, you see, there are two basic routes, a wireline route and a wireless route. Now, while wireline is easy to manage and easy to provide in areas which are habitable, which are not geographically challenged, but in the rural, when it comes to the rural and remote areas, you need wireless technologies because fiber or copper or coax cable, laying cables is a huge challenge because of the distance involved, because of the geographies involved, which could be a forest area or it could be a hilly area. So carrying fiber across or even water bodies is a big challenge in these kind of terrains. Hence, wireless technologies proliferate in such areas across. And this is a global phenomenon, nothing specific to India. And in these areas, some of the technologies, and I'm not here distinguishing between backhaul and access, some of the major technologies that actually help in carrying broadband, good quality broadband connectivity to such areas, particularly the rural, remote, and geographically challenged terrains, are the likes of satellite. We have just heard Gaurav speak about it. Then the next comes the wireless backhaul technologies like E and V band, Gigamesh, etc. You'll be hearing more of it from the other speakers. And the third is the area of public Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi technology. Now, why is Wi-Fi technology so popular in the rural and remote areas? It's simply because it's a wireless technology and it's easier to actually connect people from the nearest point of presence of an optical fiber or a copper pair to large and remote areas because of the simple reason that it can carry signals over a distance and it doesn't need the help of a wireline, a fiber, or it doesn't need towers to help proliferate that particular technology. And hence, these technologies are considered suitable for the rural and remote terrains. So with this as a backdrop, I would now open my presentation. Over to Vagesh for the next slide, please. So Wi-Fi 6 and 6E is the technology that I'm going to touch upon. Why is it important to talk about Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E? And what is Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E? So let me first distinguish between them. So Wi-Fi 6 is the 802.11 AX standard, which is now currently working in popular in many parts of the world. It works on both the existing bands, the spectrum bands for which are unlicensed bands for Wi-Fi, which includes the 5 gigahertz band, as well as the upcoming new technology or the new unlicensed spectrum band, which is 6 gigahertz. Whereas Wi-Fi 6E, which is a standard ahead of Wi-Fi 6, it's called Wi-Fi 6E because it is enhanced Wi-Fi 6. It works only in the 6 gigahertz spectrum band. Now, why is 6 gigahertz important? 6 gigahertz is ideally suitable for, as I mentioned, for both Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. What 6 gigahertz allows, and the 6 gigahertz for those who are into spectrum management, we would understand that it starts from 5,925 megahertz on the lower side and goes up to 7,125 megahertz on the upper side. So it's a total band of 1200 megahertz. In a 1200 megahertz, and this is a chunk of spectrum, the like of which has not been made available to the Wi-Fi players in the lower bands like 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, where the spectrum chunk available is around 80 megahertz in the case of 2.4 gigahertz, and it is around about 600 megahertz in the case of 5 gigahertz. So given the availability of 1200 megahertz in 6 gigahertz band, this allows for extremely high carrier sizes of the capacity of 80 megahertz and 160 megahertz, the likes of which are not possible to be done with these lower bands. And the larger the band size, the better is the throughput, better is the speed. And broadband is all about how much capacity you can download and at what speeds. So therefore, it is ideal for high quality, high speed, high throughput broadband penetration in the areas where Wi-Fi is being provided. Wi-Fi 6, and I make it very clear, and Wi-Fi in general, is complementary to mobile broadband. It is not competing with mobile broadband. And technologies like OFDMA and MIMO, which are used in the case of 5G, are also available for being used with Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E, thereby making Wi-Fi 6 and 6E complementary to 5G, because we all know that while 5G can be successful and probably delivered in the urban areas where fiber is available and towers are available, it will be a challenge to deliver 5G in the rural areas. So Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E can complement 5G so that we can achieve provision of equal facilities or urban amenities in rural areas. It's called Pura. It was first designated by our former president of India, Shri APJ Abdul Kalam. He said that the rural areas and the urban areas must have the same quality of service and the same services. And to be able to enable this, we would need Wi-Fi to complement mobile broadband in the urban areas. So Wi-Fi 6 and 6E can complement 5G. The Wi-Fi 6 can meet the needs of rural broadband and increase the speed of broadband access. I think I've already talked about it. So we can move on to the next slide. Over to you, Vagish. Next slide, please. The world is moving fast to de-license 6 gigahertz. I've just spoken about the relevance of 6 gigahertz. It is extremely important to induct the new generation of technologies, which is Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E. US has de-licensed the 6 gigahertz band as early as April 2020, 2 years back. Almost 40 countries today, if you can see the number there on the graph below. So 40 countries have already de-licensed the 6 gigahertz band. Some have done it completely, like US, Brazil, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and many others. A few of the countries like UK and the European Union have de-licensed a part of the band, the lower part of the band. As you can see, 5925 to 6425, and the upper part of the band is still open for further discussions. Next slide, please.
Mr. Devashish, just a quick time check. We were just about a minute for the presentation.
Okay, cut it short. So 6 gigahertz importance and Wi-Fi 6 in India. There are umpteen use cases. We can talk about machine to machine, IoT, human to human connectivity, offload of traffic from the TSPs to the Wi-Fi to inside the residential building where TSP networks are not available, and of course rural broadband coverage. And what I mentioned again, and I would like to reiterate, it provides you capability to support 80 and 160 megahertz channel bandwidth, which is not available, which is not possible to be made available from the lower spectrum, which is available in the Wi-Fi. Next slide, please. Benefits, spoken all. Just to reiterate, increased data rate, reduced latency as we go into Wi-Fi 6E and then Wi-Fi 7. excellent IoT coverage, higher density. We can pack number of connective connections in a small area, and a more spectral as well as power efficient as we go higher and in the technology curve. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. So the future outlook is that we expect huge economic value from unlicensed spectrum, including 6 gigahertz. A study was conducted by Professor Rekha Jain on behalf of Broadband India Forum, report of which is available on the BIF website, which talks about the economic value of unlicensed spectrum, including 6 gigahertz, to be of the order of 12.7 lakh crores by 2025. Often it is confused that unlicensed spectrum must be, if it is given free of cost, what is the value that the government gets? So the actual, it is not only for the public good, but there is an economic value, which is 12.7 lakh crores. You guys can, everybody can go to our BIF website and check this. Speeds are faster, better spectral efficiency. Wi-Fi 6 can provide complementary service for 5G in the rural areas, as well as for private networks. And since our NDCP talks about 10 million hotspots to be created in a 5-year time frame, we need more unlicensed spectrum to help proliferate these public Wi-Fi hotspots that India so desperately needs. So bands like 6 gigahertz and V-band would help actually deliver this high capacity, high speed, and highly secure broadband services to the consumers, particularly in the rural areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya. And with that, we'll move on to the next presentation in the session by P. Charumati. And she will be talking on PM Vani platforms. So quick introduction about Ms. Charumati. Ms. Charumati is working as a group leader at CDOT Bangalore. She holds a master's in computer application from Punjab University, Chandigarh, and is a certified project management professional, PMP. She has 21 plus years of experience on design and development of multiple technologies such as Iyer network, 2G and 5G radio access network, 4G E Node B for femto and macro networks, Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6 based access solutions. Currently, she is coordinating the PM Vani Central Registry, PM Vani Service Delivery Platform, and Wi-Fi and program at CDOT. With that introduction, over to you, Ms. Charumati.
So good morning, everyone. So I'd like to thank BIF for giving me an opportunity so that I can present the CDOT platform as a service solution for the PM Vani PDOA. So before I delve into what CDOT has an offering for the PDOA, I would like to give a very brief introduction about the PM Vani scheme. So the PM Vani scheme was launched by the government in the last year on the 9th December 2020. And it mainly has 4 key players: the PDOA, who are the last mile internet service providers who establish, maintain, and operate the Wi-Fi access points. So it is the PDOA typically who does the capex investment for buying that access point, and who also takes care of the OPEX investment of paying for the broadband service every month. Then we have the public data office aggregator, the PDOA, who is an aggregator of the PDOs and performs the functions with respect to authorization and accounting. The PDOA software also provides the software for the end user to buy the plans, which he would be making use of while availing the internet service over PM Vani. Then we have the app provider, who develops an app for using which the users register themselves to make use of the PM Vani service. And also using the app only, the users discover that what are the Vani compliant Wi-Fi hotspots in the nearby area. And within the app, the user selects the SSID for accessing the internet service. Then we have the central registry, which in accordance with the Vani architecture and specification maintains the details of all the app providers, PDOAs, and the PDUs. So in the PM Vani network, we will just see that how the user gets access to the internet service in the PM Vani network. So before getting access for internet, the user will have to first install the PM Vani app over his existing 3G, 4G, or home Wi-Fi connection. After installing the app, the user provides his mobile number over which an OTP is sent, and the user enters that. So using which the KYC of the user is performed. Once the KYC of the user is performed, the user then creates his user profile, providing a password for his username. Now, using this two-step process, basically the user data is created on the app provider backend. Now, whenever the user wants to avail the internet service, the user opens the app. In the app, the user is able to see all the SSIDs which are PM1 compliant. The user then selects that SSID, and on selection of the SSID from the app, a WANI app token is formed and it is sent to the PDOA network. The PDOA network then adds the information with respect to the PDOA ID, informs the WANI PDOA token to verify whether the user who is wanting to avail the PM1 service is really an authenticated user or not. So the PDOA network then forms the WANI PDOA token and sends it to the app provider software. In the app provider backend, basically it is verified that whether the user is an authenticated user or not, and accordingly the user profile is sent back to the PDOA network. On receipt of the user profile, the PDOA network then validates that whether the user is really having the plan available with him or not. So based upon whether the user is a first-time user or already is an existing user, the user will be shown a captive portal page through which the user can then buy a plan or claim a free plan. After this, the user will be able to access the internet service. So the salient features of PM1 if we see, first of all, that there are no registration, no license, and no fee for the last mile Wi-Fi providers, that is the PDOs. There is no license and no fee and a very simple registration process for the PDOA and the app providers, wherein their registration confirmation happens within 7 working days, and they are offered a license with which they can operate all over India. Also, as we have seen, the function of authentication have been unbundled, wherein the authentication function is being taken care of by the app, while the authorization and accounting of the end users are being taken care at the PDOA software. So it's an interoperable framework where anyone can become a PDO, PDOA, or an app provider. Over the last decade or so, we have really seen that the broadband proliferation cannot be like the task of 1 or 2 TSPs. In a country of our scale, wherein if you really want to proliferate the broadband, there has to be a mass participation. And PM1 provides the exact foundation, the exact framework over which this mass participation can be availed. We can have multiple players coming forward as PDOs, PDOAs, and app provider, which can really help in the broadband proliferation in our country. And this is with broadband proliferation, as we have seen in the previous slides as well. It is not just the broadband. It gives a huge boost to the GDP of the country. And that is why we can also see like that there will be an increase in the income of the small and micro entrepreneurs who will come forward to become or participate as PDO, PDOAs, and app providers in this ecosystem. So with this basic understanding of the framework, we can now understand that as part of the PDOA offering, there are certain features which have to be essential, which are mandatory. Like we need to have a token handler, a captive portal, an authorization and accounting for the end users. So these are the mandatory features which have to be offered. And then there are certain other features which are mandated as per the framework needs. Like recently we have been also mandated by the DOTs that all the PDOs would have to supply the key performance indicators to the central registry. There is also that all the lawful interception, all the logs of the users have to be maintained. So these are some of the essential features which have to be offered, which are offered by CDOT as part of its PDOA platform as a service offering, which are mandatory, which have to be given for the end user to serve as a PDOA. Now, apart from this, basically for the PDOA to operationalize his network, we are offering him a PDOA management portal. So using this PDOA management portal, the PDOA can now add the PDOs who are going to be the part of his network. Also, With each PDO, he can associate that what are the hotspots or access points the PDOs is going to manage. The PDO A is going to, based upon his business case. So one very good thing about the PM-WANI framework is that it is a purely technical framework. It does not give any guidelines with respect to the business framework. So every PDO A can come up with his own business model. So that is really, it's like as an open field for the PDOAs to play around. So the PDOAs, based upon his business case with the PDOs, he can think about that what are the kind of plans that I would want to offer. So the platform offers the flexibility for the end user to define their own plans. And then after the user has made his own plans, he has operationalized the PDOs, he has operationalized the access points, the PDO-A can see that how the network is now being used. Basically, how many users are coming and availing the internet service, how many vouchers they are buying from each PDO, how they are consuming the data under the various PDO. So the complete subscriber details can be seen by the PDO-A. These were the features which we have in our initial offering. We have offered these features. And now we are working on some additional features wherein the PDO-A, like in my first slide, as I had told, like it is the PDO who is making the investment for buying the access point, and he is bearing the operational expenditure for paying towards the broadband service. So there has to be a revenue which has to be settled with the PDO, because when the user is buying the voucher, all the money is going to the PDO-A. So now we are modifying, like we are offering new features in our platform using which there can be a revenue settlement can happen between the PDO-A and the PDO. Like the management portal will provide the functionality for the remote management of the access points. We are going to provide a help desk function using which the PDO-A, the PDO, the end user can raise any concerns or issues they are facing while accessing the internet service. And also with our close interaction with all our PDO-As, we have understood that there is a need and a demand for having PDO-specific plans, as the broadband rates are not uniform everywhere. Somewhere the rates are higher, somewhere the rates lower. So the plans have to be of various types. So we are also working that how we can facilitate the PDO-As with PDO-specific plans.
Ms. Charumati, just a time check. With just a minute over time, so if you can please.
Yeah, I'm there just in the last slide, Vinayak. So I'll just conclude. So as of now, we have 20 PDO-As who have onboarded to the CDOT platform, and our further roadmap will be surely determined by the needs of our PDO-As. CDOT is determined towards the success of PM-WANI, and we are here for the proliferation of PM-WANI network. So the requirements of our PDO-As will determine our roadmap ahead, and I look forward to the talk from other speakers, and we can see how we can collaborate together for the success of PM-WANI. I'll end my talk with this. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Charumati. With that, we will move to the special keynote address on emerging technologies in the PM-WANI ecosystem by Mr. UK Srivastava. With the advent of PM-WANI, there has been a colossal shift in the process of proliferating internet connectivity across India. PM-WANI scheme, with its endeavor to set up public Wi-Fi, has not only taken a big step in bringing up the significant benefits of internet connectivity to everyone in India, recognize the technology innovation surrounding internet connectivity. Due to this fact, there has been a large rise in the number of startups providing disruptive innovations. This rise in the number of innovators has not only amplified the process of proliferation, but also increased the magnitude and robustness of such connection while keeping the costs low. So what are the technologies that emerged thanks to PM-WANI scheme? What are the various new technologies that PDO-As utilize to proliferate the internet? To give us clarity in these subjects, we have Mr. UK Srivastava with us. A brief introduction about Mr. UK Srivastava. Mr. Srivastava belongs to the 1983 batch of Indian Telecom service and is trained in transmission technologies, including optical, radio, and satellite communications. He has managed various telecom activities, including operations, maintenance, training, quality assurance, standardizations, and policy. He has been a member of various standing committees on satellite communications. And in his present role, capacity as a Director General NTIPRIT, he is conducting various national and international level training and capacity building programs. These include certification courses on 5G, network security, webinars on various emerging topics of national and international importance, and also training and capacity building programs for various foreign delegates as part of ITEC and APT events. Yeah, so without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Srivastava to take the stage and request to deliver his keynote address. But just before I hand off, I just want to remind the audience that you can put your questions in the chat, and right after these presentations, we'll be taking the questions. With that, over to you, Mr. Srivastava.
Thank you very much, Vinayak. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Broadband India Forum, Mr. Rajat Mukherjee, Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya, my co-panelists in this session, and number of participants. I think it was touching more than 100 at one time. My topic is emerging technologies utilized in the PM Vani, but let us understand how PM Vani came about. Ms. Charumati has very excellently, eloquently explained the whole, architecture of the current system. But let's understand how it came about. Then I will talk what other technologies can be integrated with the existing PM Vani project. I think most of you know that this is a project. It was conceived by TRAI. TRAI being the regulator, it was not its job to suggest to the government or to the industry as to what should be the architecture of a network, how broadband can. Of course, it was our responsibility to say how broadband will proliferate, but how exactly it will proliferate was not our, job. But somehow or the other, our chairman at that time, he thought that we should have a structure which should be interoperable, it should be totally decentralized, it should be plug and play, and we should not recommend anything with regard to business cases and revenue sharing and things like this. Make a very frugal system so that anybody can come and get attached. So I'm no more with TRAI, but I feel proud that I was part of this whole process of recommending the structure. And in fact, when it was finally accepted by the government, I came back to DOT. So again, I was part of this while this was being, the new rules were framed and these instructions were issued. It all started with our chairman visited Varanasi Ghats. And Varanasi Ghats, BSNL had just started Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi network. And minister also visited, and he in fact inaugurated. There was a small survey done, and in the survey people said that we don't know what is this service, one, and two is how to get the sachet, charge cards, where to get, So what chairman said when he came back, he said, look here, why can't we make the whole thing frictionless and make it electronic payment, connect it with the electronic payment gateway and all. Second issue was that he was very frustrated that whenever he has to log on to a public Wi-Fi network, OTP has to be generated. So we told him, look here, sir, the OTP has to be generated because the subscriber's identity is looked with his mobile number, and we kind of assume that KYC has been done by the service provider, and therefore when OTP comes and there is an authentication through OTP, we'll be able to know as to who was the subscriber who was accessing the network. But still he had reservations. He thought that, no, this is not a good process. We have to find out an alternative to this all. He said that when I visit European airports, they say if Wi-Fi is available straight away, I don't get any OTP and I'm able to use it. So again, we told that they have other methods of restricting, doing law enforcement and all. We are not, so much up to date. But again, in our hotels, once you have logged in, second time when you go or third time when you go, you automatically your Wi-Fi becomes on, and this happens because of the MAC address being registered in the server, and therefore, so this can be done. We said that we can develop an architecture in which this can be done. Of course, that became subsequently a bone of contention within DOT because the security agencies were very particular that this will compromise security. Therefore, every time there should be OTP. And we said, look, if we expect OTP where there is no coverage, we are trying to provide broadband connectivity in those places where there is no coverage from the service provider, despite all the big claims by everyone. So if OTP doesn't come, he will not be able to hook onto the network. So please, for God's sake, there should be one-time OTP, and after that, leave him free. And it should be he should be recognized with his device's MAC address. So when all these things started, we realized that when we compare with European standards, we have very poor penetration of public Wi-Fi networks, and those things we collated and issued a consultation paper in July 2016. And we asked people to suggest ways and means to increase the proliferation of the, public Wi-Fi networks. And then also there was a question as to why the existing telecom service provider does not provide Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi equipment is extremely cheap, because the spectrum itself is de-licensed. So why there is no proliferation? So the answer came that the service provider has spent a lot of money buying spectrum for access. So he's trying to redeem that rather than spending his energy on, public Wi-Fi. So then there was a realization, why can't smaller people be authorized to kind of set up this public Wi-Fi hotspot and provide connectivity? And for example, a small grocery shop or pawn shop or tea shop, why can't they hang a small, hotspot there, provide electricity, take care of it, and maybe through the sachet or through electronic payment, we should be in a position to provide connectivity. Then the question came that the existing licensing regime will not permit that. Therefore, there was a requirement to develop a specific registration scheme for such people. So after all these considerations, in March 2017, we came out with the recommendations, and we told the government that, look here, there should be a very simple registration process. And that time when we were thinking, what should we call these entities? So to our mind, it came public call office. So let us make public data office. So PDO was developed. Then we thought that it is too much of an ask for a grocery shop holder to arrange for the equipment, number one, to get necessary software for integrating into the network, and also, connecting to the payment gateway and things like that. So we thought that this is a zamana of aggregators like Ola, Uber, Oyo at that time. We thought, why can't we have aggregators whom we call PDOA? So the term PDOA was generated, and we recommended to the government that this kind of arrangement can be done, and the electronic KYC should be done, and simple process for OTP and all this we recommended. We also recommended that these providers should be able to share infrastructure without any limitations. The ISP should be also allowed to share infrastructure. So then the issue came, and now our chairman was very particular. He said that, why can't I resell my data? I'm getting data, I'm buying a broadband connection at my home, let's say for 500 GB. If I use only 300 GB, I should be in a position to sell 200 GB. We said that if you take a commercial connection, then perhaps you can sell. We can make a recommendation that there should be resale in the commercial connection, not for the private connection. The private connection is like a fixed, unlimited thali. You go to a shop, you get an unlimited thali, but only one person has to eat. It's not that the thali is unlimited, any number of chapatis can be put there, so 10 people can come and sit there and eat. It's not there. There is a certain business case in this. So then we said that resale should be permitted, and these registrants, that is PDO, they should get broadband, on lease from ISPs on commercial rates. So all these things were finalized, and this network was created. But then again, there was resistance. There was resistance from the service providers. Naturally, they felt threatened that what will happen. They were not very clear about. And also, DOT was also in second thought that how can we register people and ask them to provide telecom services without seeking any revenues from them, and so on and so forth. There may be court cases from entrenched players and so on. So, but ultimately, government's decision, final decisions prevailed. It was called PM Vani, and all of you know that it's a wonderful architecture, very simple architecture, for which we did pilot. We did pilot, not just in Delhi, also in Bangalore, and there were at least 12 to 15 startups. This was the first time when Department of Telecom involved startups in telecommunication sector, and there were 3-4 at least app providers. And mind you, this, as Ms. Charumati also highlighted, this architecture does not talk about any revenue, business case, anything. You make your case. So therefore, the question came as to who will set up the central registry. Somebody said that we will do tender for it. Okay, RFP we will be issuing. I was adamant. I said there is no revenue stream for the central registry. Therefore, it has to be done at CDOT, and that is how the CDOT came into picture. And I think CDOT is doing perfectly wonderful job managing this system. Then what should be the business case for the app provider? So we found out that app provider can connect it with the payment gateway. He can have his own voucher like Paytm is doing today. And then the app provider can provide so many things. He can provide quality of call. He can provide, when you open your application, he will tell you nearby shopping areas, availability of cheap goods and services and things like this, hotels and so on. So, and that is how this thing is expanding. She was explaining that there are, I think, 20 app providers today. I'm not very sure, but there are certainly a number of app providers, and it is going to expand. Mr. Bhattacharya has already explained that Wi-Fi 6, in fact, Wi-Fi 7 is also there, 802.11be. These are the technologies which will be able to help in further proliferation, because the 5G, all of you know, 2.4G, there is very little spectrum. 5G, there is little more spectrum, but the thing is, this will become capacity limited. People will be expecting higher download bandwidth, so therefore we will have to move to higher frequency band and greater chunk of spectrum. We should be de-licensed. I am saying it from government side, but this is my recommendation, my personal feeling that like in other developed countries, we have to see that more and more spectrum is de-licensed. Then one of the technology options is to have free space optics. So one of the companies in Bangalore, they are using, in fact, they were the main companies who were involved in the process of pilot of this Vani. Apart from some friends of Mr. Bhattacharya, they were also there. CDOT was also there. They are the founding members of this whole architecture. So FSO is a very good option, because if you have to take signal from one point to other point, connect the radiating elements, it is possible that on rooftops you can mount this small devices for interconnection. Satellite is another option. Gaurav has been promising that the cost will come down. So if the cost comes down, perhaps this can also be integrated into the Vani network. There was also an issue. I think I will finish in 1 minute.
Sure.
Vinayak, you are I think pointing. Yeah, there was also an issue of subscriber roaming. Somebody said that if roaming is provided, more and more people will hook up. But the whole idea was that there should be very, small denomination sachets and packages. So people should, and those people who are living in rural areas and all, they're not migrating so frequently. So normally they go to the same pawn shop or same small grocery shop. So they will be accessing the network from there itself. Therefore, consciously, we have avoided any sharing of revenue and mobility and things like this. If you have to do all this, then you go for Wi-Fi hotspot 2.0. You don't have to come to one architecture. You don't have to apply so much of mind to develop something like this. So I'm sure that this is going to be a very, very good architecture. It will be copied worldwide. In fact, once Mr. TVR had come to TRAI and he said, why don't you take patent for this? And why don't you market it worldwide? Certainly, this is something very much like UPI, very much like Aadhaar, India stack, which can be sold. And we have to be proud that we have done something like this. And we have proved that it is successful. I will suggest that those who are getting any difficulties, contact the license service areas in your states for any difficulty in hooking on to the network or becoming part of this network, like PDOs and PDOs. Please do that. One important final announcement that I'm going to make, and that is in NTIPRIT, we are going to open an excellence center for broadband policy research. Very shortly, we will open if everything falls in place in time. We are going to do a lot of research with regard to broadband proliferation. I will seek help and support from all the startups and everyone who is interested in national development and seeking prosperity for our beloved nation. Please join hands together and see that every technology which is Indian, it is generally cost effective, it should succeed. Thank you very much. And thank you very much. I'm very happy to have been invited to this event, and I'm really thankful to you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Back to you, Vinayak.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Srivastava, for that presentation and giving the context about the background of PM-WANI, and Ms. Charumati for giving the technical aspects of it, and the speakers earlier, Mr. Debashish and Mr. Gaurav, for the different aspects, the technical aspects. So what we'll do now is we'll quickly go to Q&A. So if you have any questions, this is your time to ask. Please post them in the chat. We have a couple of questions. Just give me a second, just pulling them up. So the first question is, with the rapid advancement of technology, there is a risk of compatibility issues. The hardware must also be improved to enjoy the benefit of such technologies. In India, there are about 4 lakh hotspots which are active now thanks to PM-WANI, and now the government and institutions like Broadband India Forum are taking various initiatives like Connectivity Accelerator program to rapidly increase the count. For PDOs who are partnering with you to proliferate such hotspots, can you give them a checklist that they will need to tick in terms of software and hardware to support such a rapid change in technology? So any of the panelists want to quickly take this question?
Yeah, so Vinayak, whosoever signs up with CDOT for the PDOA platform as a service, so we do provide them a checklist of what are the things that they need to arrange and what would be the things that would be provided by CDOT. And CDOT marketing and CDOT field support teams provide them, handhold them for, bringing up their network. So anyone who is interested can get in touch with CDOT, and we can provide them the services for onboarding, getting onboarded as a PDO.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Before we go on to the next session, because we are at the halfway point, just past the halfway point actually. With the high capacity of the internet, there can be high capacity innovation. There can be technologies which we would not have even imagined with the current bandwidth. Which areas do you think will be most impacted by the 6 GHz band? What new innovations can we expect? Do you think it will increase the standard of living of Indian people? If so, how? So one of the panelists, can you take this up and just keep it brief because we're little over time.
Yeah, thank you, Vinayak. If I can go ahead, please. I'll answer that since I was the one who spoke about 6 gigahertz and Wi-Fi 6.
Absolutely.
So it is perhaps correct on my part also to answer this question. So 6 gigahertz, as I mentioned, is not only useful for the next generation Wi-Fi technologies like Wi-Fi 6E and also Wi-Fi 6, but it will be also useful for development of new and innovative applications, particularly in the areas of AR, VR, in the case of short SRDs, which is short range devices. So it is going to be playing a very major role in number of innovative use cases. And in fact, I think we have with the 6 gigahertz delicensing happening in other countries, what we are seeing is right now only the tip of the iceberg. Most of them are using it only for Wi-Fi. But once as time goes on, we are going to see more and more innovation which is going to be developed. And since India is the hotbed for startups, we believe that if 6 gigahertz is delicensed completely, and BIF has done a study of coexistence in the 6 gigahertz of the existing players, which is the fixed services and the fixed satellite services. And we have found that you can have Wi-Fi across the entire spectrum of 1200 megahertz without causing any interference to the existing users. So with this as the backdrop and with a very detailed study which has been carried out, which is available on our BIF website, so there is no cause for any fear or any problem which could be faced by the incumbents. So hence this band could be opened up completely for delicensing, and it would help not just the proliferation of Wi-Fi, because it provides you high capacity and low latencies and provides you 5G-like services in the rural and remote areas. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya. With that, we will conclude this session one on exploring the frontier technologies in the internet connectivity domain. And with that, we will quickly move on to the second session. So let me just quickly introduce the second session as well. Meanwhile, I think it was fascinating for me as well to listen about some of these technologies, because personally, I have myself worked with, volunteered with IETF, which is Internet Engineering Task Force. But interestingly, I have worked at higher levels, that the application layer, and knowing more about the underlying layers is very fascinating for me. I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm actually wearing an IETF t-shirt right now, which is quite interesting. So with that, I will quickly move on to the second session, which is a presentation on BF connectivity program. With that, I want to introduce Mr. Arun Mukherjee. Broadband India Forum, in association with Headstart and supported by Meta, has launched the first edition of Connectivity Accelerator program. And the purpose of this program is to enable entrepreneurs in the internet connectivity domain who are striving to provide affordable, reliable, and quality internet access to the people of India. To give a brief idea about the value of the program, we have Mr. Arun Mukherjee with us. A brief introduction about Mr. Arun Mukherjee. Mr. Arun Mukherjee is the Senior Director of Operations at Broadband India Forum. He's the leading authority in the telecommunications sector in India, specializing in the complex policy and regulatory issues confronting telecom in India. He is a veteran when it comes to government relations, public and media relations, marketing, and business development. Mr. Arun Mukherjee has taken up charge as the Executive Program Coordinator. And with that, I want to give the floor to Mr. Arun so that he can quickly talk to us about this program in more detail. Over to you, Mr. Mukherjee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and a very good afternoon to one and all. This is just a brief sort of summary of what we are trying to do in the BIF Connectivity Accelerator program. Having supported the concept of PM WANI, well, WANI right from the inception, we are fully driven to support the PM WANI implementation across the country. Now, for all such programs, considerable planning and support, planning and resources are required. And as in all our programs, we have the unstinting support of all our members. For this Connectivity Accelerator program, I must thank Meta, our patron member, who has stepped forward to guide and support this program. Also, such a large program requires considerable expertise to run it. for which we have the more than able support of Headstart Network Foundation, who has vast experience working with startups and entrepreneurs, and who have connected a number of successful accelerator programs in the past. So the actual program, give you a brief idea, we're running a series of learning programs, one of which is today. And meanwhile, we have on the website, if you see at the bottom, we have the URL for the website, and it is being posted in the chat also. We are requesting that people who are interested to participate should register. And just to explain what we are looking at registration, we are looking at the involvement of entrepreneurs who are based out of and operating in India and who have proven traction wherein their technology and business model can be validated, who have deployed an innovative or disruptive technology and or business model towards improving internet connectivity in India. And we are considering criteria like availability, reliability, capacity, and affordability. We would really like all entrepreneurs who are involved with the PM Vani, who are interested to be in the PM Vani, to please register on the website. So once the registration process is complete, we will be working with a host of mentors on our panel who have tremendous experience in working with entrepreneurs and are looking forward to working with PM Vani entrepreneurs to try and provide what learnings they can share for strengthening the registered entrepreneurs' efforts. In addition to this technology and business support, we will be making available through organizations who have partnered with the accelerator. And last but definitely not least, we have a panel of investors who will be talking to the registered companies to see how they could get involved and judge for themselves as to how they could extend support. Right at the end, and I'll be coming to that slide a little later, we would be having a session where it would be on a very large scale, where we would be requesting the successful registrations to give a demo of their product and make a pitch to the investors, and they have an opportunity to win grants of up to 20 lakhs for the winners. So we're trying to extend as much support as possible to the entrepreneurs, but at the same time, this is also for building a strong ecosystem in future for the growth of PM Vani. We hope to encourage greater development of corporate investors to help entrepreneurs. Once the process of discussions and evaluations are done, as I said, we would shortlist the best candidates, and there will be an award ceremony of up to 20 lakhs. So please do register. We have an impressive panel of mentors, one of whom is Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, who is president of our forum only, and he's very often known, been called the Bhisham Pitama of the industry, has helped a lot of entrepreneurs in his time. And as you can see, if you could go to the website, you'd see many more names. We have Ms. Kannan, Mr. Mashelkar, Mr. Mittal from Meta, many more. Plus, we have a lot of partner organizations who will be engaging with the entrepreneurs to look at techno-commercial innovations like Meta, Cisco, Nokia. There are foundations who are joining also who have expertise in this area. They'll be sharing their knowledge and information with the people who have registered for this accelerator program. There are also incubators who are partners. They have been working with entrepreneurs for long, and they would be sharing their experts and expertise to guide this program. And of course, investors. Headstart has identified investors who've worked in the ICT field specially, just to give an idea. If you take Connectivity Capital, for example, they've globally been financing entrepreneurs who are internet providers, especially in South Africa, India, and Ecuador. And their portfolio includes people, Wi-Fi service providers in these countries. If you take Chirate Ventures, they have an impressive list of startups who they've invested in, including some who've gone on to become unicorns. They have even a more impressive list of advisors in Mr. Ratan Tata, who no introduction is necessary actually, Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan of Infosys fame, Mr. Manish Choksi, who is vice chairman and member and board of the board of directors of Asian Paints Limited, to name a few. I won't get into more of it; it'll take a lot of time. So once again, to summarize the previous slides, We launched the program in January this year, and we are running these learning series events during the period given for registrations to take place. The exact registration date may move slightly as to what is indicated here, which is the 15th of March. But the Accelerator program would kick off in earnest mid-April with the full involvement of mentors and partners. This would culminate with the shortlisted registrations demonstrating and presenting their solutions, followed with the awards ceremony. With that, I will say thank you, while requesting interested parties to register in the form provided on the website, once again displayed below. The website is provided in the platform chat also for you to copy. Thank you from Broadband India Forum, Meta, and Headstart. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mukherjee. With that, I would quickly move on to the third and the final sessions, which is on the state-of-the-art technologies leveraged by internet connectivity ventures. Technologies are rapidly becoming an inextricable part of human life and business alike. Technology is perhaps the most significant contributor for the success or failure of a business. Our world has started revolving around state-of-the-art technologies and the values they proliferate. The entrepreneurial culture heralds the most aggressive forms of technology innovation in any domain. To thrive and sustain in today's digital age, with rapid augmentations in technologies, ventures must always be innovating and must always be at the forefront. We are taking 3 such technologies today who are going to be presenting their respective frontier technologies that they have developed in their ventures. With that, I would do a quick introduction to the next speaker. And I also request the speaker to just be conscious of time because we are running a little behind time. So we have Mr. Bhuvnesh Sachdeva from HFCL who will talk upon open source PM Vani compatible hardware. A little bit about HFCL. HFCL specializes in manufacturing of telecommunications equipment, optical fiber cables, and intelligent power systems. As a telecommunications solutions provider, the company has implemented several greenfield projects, including the setting up of CDMA and GSM networks, satellite communications, wireless spectrum management, and DWDM, optical transmission network. HFCL, in collaboration with Telecom Infra Project and I2IE1, has set up Wi-Fi connectivity hotspot at Baidebettu village in Udupi district of Karnataka. The network offers Wi-Fi internet with a bandwidth of up to 500 Mbps in all common areas of the village, which is spread across a radius of 6 kilometers, benefiting over 9,000 residents. With that, we have Mr. Bhuvnesh Sachdeva, who is the Vice President of Product Development at SFCL, who will present to us the open source PM Vani compatible hardware, TIP open Wi-Fi compliant access point. Without further ado, let me give the stage to Mr. Bhuvnesh to start his presentation. Just again, a reminder in terms of time, we're running a little behind time. So I'll probably give a quick warning when we're approaching closer. With that, over to you, Mr. Bhuvnesh.
Thank you, Vinayak, and thank you, Broadband India Forum, for having me here, inviting me and giving this opportunity to speak about what we are doing. At HFCL, we started developing Wi-Fi solutions almost 3 years back with the mission that we want to provide connectivity to the unconnected parts of the country and across the globe moving further. And when we started working on the solutions, we went into a little depth of what it takes to provide this connectivity and why we have not been able to do it yet. Especially rural parts of the country, which actually is one of the largest areas of our country and nearby countries as well. So when we looked into it a little in depth, so we realized that affordability becomes the fundamental problem that has stopped us from reaching the unconnected so far. And affordability has two really categories. One is affordability for the service providers. Whenever they offer services somewhere, it has to make a business case for them. Only then they will be able to, or they will be interested to. The other is affordability for the end consumer. Even if, let's say, a service provider thinks there is a business case, he rolls out the network, and the cost of availing the services is high or high enough for the local population to use it, they'll not be able to use it, and eventually it fails the business case for the service provider. So that was the fundamental we started with. Our innovation was mostly towards making the technology affordable for all. And with that, we started working on Wi-Fi. Over time, we got introduced to Open Wi-Fi, which was an initiative by Telecom Infra Project. We realized that if any organization, they need to do all the innovation in the technology by themselves, it requires huge investment. And when there is an investment in something, and as an OEM or as a company, we would like to recover that investment over some time. And if I try to recover all that investment from my products, they become expensive for the service provider, they become eventually expensive for the end consumer. Open Wi-Fi is a very unique technology concept wherein it becomes open source, which is, of course, it is not unique in terms of, it has been known for ages now. Open source platforms are very popular, but for Wi-Fi, it was very, very unique because so far, Wi-Fi was completely owned by one OEM, right from the hardware to software to controller to the entire ecosystem. And that made it very expensive. Open Wi-Fi allows each piece to be provided by an individual or a different OEM, different company, and they all seamlessly work together because they are working on the same platform. So eventually what happens is it becomes a collaborative innovation. If I am an OEM, I do not have to innovate in every area. Somebody is innovating in software, somebody is innovating in applications, somebody is innovating in the hardware, and all of us combined together, our cost of innovation is less, and we forward that advantages to the end consumer or through the service provider. So it becomes affordable for all. So eventually what happens is OEM, service providers, system integrators, developers, customers, all of them come together, they do innovation together. And it is, every innovation is available to all because this is open source. So why Open Wi-Fi? As I mentioned that if I talk about a typical Wi-Fi solution, only the air interface, if you see on the left side at the bottom, only the air interface is defined by IEEE and certified by Wi-Fi Alliance. That is the only thing which is standardized. Everything else is proprietary, which means if you buy a solution from one vendor, you have to stick to that vendor for the entire solution. Unlike that, Open Wi-Fi community, they open sourced every interface. So now you have the air interface, which is already open. You can have a white box model wherein you have an ability to choose hardware from any vendor. The interoperable open interface between the hardware and the controller software. And of course, the controller software provides open APIs towards integration into any third-party apps. So the entire ecosystem is open source. The cost of the development comes down. The operator has an ability to choose each piece from any vendor, and they have a power to negotiate with every vendor. And eventually, the overall total cost of ownership comes down drastically. And we have done some modeling, and actually, we have seen that over 5 years, the overall total cost of ownership can be reduced by almost 60%, which is a big advantage. Now, what is provided by Open Wi-Fi and what is being developed by other OEMs? The white box hardware can be built by any ODM. We are one of them. The embedded software and controller software comes from an open source community. So it is available free of cost to everyone. Then people have developed commercial offerings on top of that in terms of value-added services. But the best thing is all of this, when plugged in together, it just works like magic. Everything works together. You need not get into any integration. Pick hardware from one vendor, so embedded software from open source community, controller software from another vendor or from open source community, and third-party value-added services from XYZ OEMs. Just plug in together and it gets to work on day one. So it just works like magic. And why this is important, I always tell that this is very analogous to Linux platform. We all remember days of Solaris and different Unix platforms wherein the platform used to be very expensive, and then Linux come in play, and people used to say this is just an R&D platform, it won't become commercial. Today we see that Linux is a mainstream operating system used by everyone. And I always compare it with this Open Wi-Fi. We strongly believe with reduced total cost of ownership, no vendor lock-in, complete interoperability, community-driven development, we believe that open Wi-Fi is going to become the mainstream, as it will provide complete, affordable solution to everyone across the globe. We have done at HFCL, we have done 2 pilot deployments in India and few deployments across the world based on open Wi-Fi platform, wherein multiple vendors are working together, offering the connectivity to the people who were otherwise not able to afford it, and they are working like a charm. Just to give the first deployment, which we did in Haryana, when we started, people were not even aware what internet is and how to use and what could be the use cases. So when we started, this was way back in 2020, early part of that. Few initial weeks or months was total consumption was only 2 GB per day, 2 GB of data per day. And as we educated the locals, the users, today we are seeing almost 250 GB of data consumption per day, which is more than 100 times. And every day we see more than 1,000 unique users which are connecting. And it is only covered by 53 access points across the village. With encouragement from this particular deployment, we heard about another village called Baidavitu in a remote part of Udupi in Karnataka, wherein even power availability is a problem. And the village is in a very high rain zone, wherein 11 months of the year it rains there. So it becomes one of the heaviest rain zones in the country. And there we had to deploy not just the Wi-Fi, but the entire infrastructure. You can see on the left corner, there is a solar panel, solar-based POEs. Then you have the radios, even the poles, lightning arresters, everything was deployed by us. And trust me, the cost of deployment was much cheaper than what it would take to do a traditional 2G, 3G, 4G kind of deployment. And today, 9,000 plus users are actually enjoying the benefit of Wi-Fi. You can see on the left bottom side, there is a teacher who is teaching to the class, but you are not seeing any students there. So what he is doing, this is the time when COVID was at its peak. He did not have connectivity at his home. He came to the school, connected to the internet that we offered. All the students are connecting at their homes, and they are enjoying the class like they are sitting in the same classroom. So that's the beauty of Wi-Fi that we could achieve in a much lower cost, which otherwise would not have been possible. And I will not go further into detail. Everyone has talked about it already. So we believe that with an affordable solution, we are going to change the future of how connectivity operates. We are going to transform education, transform entertainment. We empower the growth, and we change the workplaces, how they are working together. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. This is the portfolio that we have from HFCL. We have entire range of Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6 access points, indoor and outdoor, unlicensed band radios for providing connectivity, and a full range of L2 and L3 switches which can be deployed, and make a complete end-to-end network, which is fully PM-WANI compliant and is available today as an offer, as a bundled offer from our side. Anyone who is interested to know more about it, feel free to get in touch with me or write an email to us, and we'll be very happy to respond. Thank you. Thank you very much. Vinayak, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bhuvnesh. Very fascinating presentation. So with that, we'll quickly move on to the next presentation. We have Ms. Neha Satak, who is the founder of Astrome, and she's going to talk about Gigamesh, a little bit about Astrome. Astrome is pioneering the future of millimeter wave wireless communication, be it on Earth or from space. Reaching internet access to remote places in countries like India is difficult because laying fiber is too expensive. There is a need for wireless backhaul projects that can deliver low cost, high data capacity, and wide range. Currently available wireless backhaul products either do not provide sufficient data speeds, or the required range, or are very expensive to deploy. So Gigamesh is the pioneer product that solves this network congestion problems in 4G infrastructure and paves the way for 5G by providing fiber-like backhaul capacity wirelessly. Gigamesh reduces network congestion and also makes existing infrastructure 5G ready. Gigamesh could enable telecom operators to deploy quality, high-speed rural infrastructures at 5 times lower cost. So with that, I want to hand it over to Ms. Neha Satak to talk more about the technology and the various projects of Astrome. Over to you, Ms. Neha.
Thank you so much, Vinayak, and also thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate the opportunity to present at this forum. Let me just talk a little bit about Astrome. So Astrome is a startup, deep tech startup based out of Indian Institute of Science. From the beginning, we have been really focused on creating wireless technologies, which can basically help connect the world. So that's kind of what our focus has been. I think everybody is aware of the kind of data requirements that we have in the country and also around the world. But I also wanted to say that today connectivity is required everywhere, urban, suburban, rural, in the sky as well as over the ocean. So it's like basically a holistic network deployment approach that we are looking for as humanity, so that we can have connectivity, high bandwidth connectivity everywhere. And that's where I think wireless communication technologies come very handy, all the way, from microwave spectrum till 300 gigahertz to, of course, free space optics that have been mentioned in the previous presentations. Each have its role to play to connect this whole ecosystem. And today I'm going to talk about what Astrome is doing in the frequency bands of E-band. E-band is a very interesting band which can actually help solve some of the problems in the complete puzzle of connectivity. So just to set the background, so when we started looking at rural broadband, or rather started thinking about how to solve the rural broadband problem with our wireless kind of technologies, we saw that, of course, fiber has limited reach, which all of us know, because it really needs wireless technologies to take that capacity and distribute it, and so with the right partnership of fiber and wireless, I think the right kind of solutions can emerge to have a really holistic network that reaches everybody and reaches everybody with good high-speed internet. Of course, satellite connectivity is also a very big piece of that puzzle, but it is still expensive. And of course, with the innovation that is happening in the LEO domain as well as in the GEO, hopefully this cost will come down in the future, and they will also be able to, solve a piece of this, complete puzzle. But from our side, we said that, okay, how can we actually work on the core technology that actually powers these satellites as well as the ground infrastructure? So we set out with a vision of, making sure that high bandwidth connectivity, low cost connectivity is available across land, air and ocean. And we started to dig deeper into the core hardware as well as the software parts of wireless communication technology. And what we found fascinating was that the higher frequency spectrum, above 60 gigahertz going up till even 70 to 90 gigahertz are basically frequency bands which are very, very interesting for creating sort of that backhaul infrastructure, which can make fiber capacity reach different location, basically distribute the fiber capacity wherever fiber ends. It can basically take the capacity and distribute it. So from that perspective, we this is like kind of what we thought was the immediate requirement, and this is like mainly numbers that we thought are true for India. But of course, if you go around the world, these numbers will slightly differ depending on which country you're talking about. But I think the backhaul requirement in general in the rural areas, the fiber ends at some place, and then you need to make that capacity reach anywhere between 3 to 10 kilometers, to basically a location where the end consumers, the rural customers are, present. And the kind of data speeds that are required are anywhere between half a Gbps to 2 Gbps. And of course, this need is only going to increase. In the urban areas, of course, we have the 4G and 5G infrastructure, 5G infrastructure, which is coming up very quickly. Number of cell sites will increase by a factor of 5 times. And so we also need wireless technologies to sort of connect, all of the small and micro cells that are going to get created because of 5G, with capacities even going up till 15 Gbps or 20 Gbps in the future. And there the distance is kind of, half a kilometer to about 2 kilometers. That kind of a distance is required for wireless technologies to actually complement fiber. And in the suburban areas, similar story, in between rural and urban in terms of distance as well as capacity. So what we have designed at Astrome is basically the world's first multi-beam E-band radio. So E-band is an interesting frequency spectrum, as I said. In most parts of the world, it is light license, which means that it is not auctioned and it is like a fixed licensing fee model. And the reuse of the spectrum is extremely high because of the prevailing regulations. So for example, in most parts of the world, these are frequencies that are used for point-to-point communication and with a very, very narrow focused, transmission. So because of that, you can actually use the same spectrum many times in an area without causing interference between different links. So that was kind of fascinating for us. But what is actually, if you look at the technologies available in E-band, first of all, they are mostly point-to-point, and they are also mechanically aligned. So we said that, okay, how can we take that one step further to basically help reduce the capex cost of deployment? Because if you have fiber ending at some place and you want to distribute the capacity in different directions, and if you were to deploy too many radios, the capex cost can go significantly high. So we started working on a fundamentally, different kind of E-band technology, which could basically, do multi-beam, multi-point kind of communication, and still adhering to those, light licensing regulations, which will make sure that the frequency reuse in a particular sector is very, very high. So we came up with Gigamesh, which is basically a wireless radio, which can do today up to 4 links from a single device. So 4 links of Gbps capacity in 4 different directions. And that's kind of a solution which we think is ideal today for rural broadband to connect from Gram Panchayat to village, to take the fiber capacity from Gram Panchayat to village, and even from block to Gram Panchayat. And in the future also in the 5G networks, for those high capacity, short distance applications. Because really in the E-band spectrum, there is a 10 gigahertz spectrum that is, that is available, and that can, mean that the capacities can go anywhere from 10 Gbps to 20 Gbps per link also in the coming future. So that's kind of what, we developed. And, we think that this is a good solution, as I was saying, that, why don't we use the existing fiber capacity and sort of distribute it to the village and the suburban areas. What is also interesting for us is like, I personally got, acquainted with Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6 particularly, maybe a year back. And I was really fascinated. And I think the way we see is that I think the high throughput wireless technologies, which can basically carry the data from fiber point to a particular location, can be, if you marry that technology with sort of the Wi-Fi 6 mesh technology, both for outdoors as well as, indoors, that can be a very, very powerful solution. So this kind of, the picture that you see on the slide is sort of a depiction of what we think is a very, very powerful solution, for rural broadband around the world. So if we can have E-band sort of carry, Gbps capacities, or even, 10 Gbps in the future, to areas, maybe cluster of homes, and then have Wi-Fi, create these mesh architecture, to distribute the capacity in that area. I think that can be a very powerful solution that we wanted to bring out, to the world. So this is sort of, from our, from our perspective, I think E-band and of course also V-band for suburban areas is becoming very popular all around the world, mainly because of, the reason that it is very, very quick to deploy, which I think other speakers in this forum have also mentioned. But I just wanted to, bring out what is the advantage that Gigamesh is creating, apart from all the other wireless solutions that are available. So first of all, I think because of this multi-point, kind of configuration, I think the CapEx cost which we can provide is significantly low. Second of all, because the technology that we have developed is completely software driven and software controlled, we also have a number of factors with which we can actually reduce the OpEx cost. OpEx cost for an operator or an ISP, so that they don't have to have long cycles of maintenance, which is, also sometimes true for fiber, if you put fiber in the last mile. Also, the solutions are quick to deploy, so one can have a rural broadband network, ready in no time. So that's kind of a very key, advantage that comes with the technology. Over and above what wireless products can, do. To be deployed, quicker. In our product Gigamesh, we actually have automated the complete, antenna alignment setup, and all in algorithms without any human intervention. So those are like powerful automation, features that we are bringing with our product, which are not there in any other, E-band kind of, or rather millimeter wave kind of, products around the world. And then last but not the least, I think the aim with Gigamesh is, E-band frequencies, often, there is a question that is always posed that, okay, rain attenuation is a reality. How do you really achieve long ranges with the rain attenuation? So what we are also trying to do with Gigamesh is, to have, higher, basically EIRPs so that we can achieve longer range. And I think that's kind of going to be a key, aspect which is going to make this product and our solution very versatile, both for rural remote connectivity as well as for urban, 5G deployment scenarios. I thought I'll just end my presentation here. If I hope I'm on time. But these are just few recognitions and awards that Astrome has got for this product, and of course we've been supported by both Department of Telecom through various projects like 5G Hackathon and DCIS, and also from Department of Defense through the IDEX initiative. So very thankful to be here. So back to you, Vinayak.
Thanks, Ms. Neha. So with that, I think we'll move to the final presentation of this session. The final presentation of this session is on FSOC by Mr. James Solomon, who is the founder of CTO-to. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. CTO-to is a promising emerging venture in the space of internet connectivity, focusing the efforts in building robust FSOC infrastructure. Free space optical communication, or FSOC, is an optical communication technology that uses light propagating in free space to wirelessly transmit data for telecommunications or computer networking. Free space optics can be predominantly used for communications between spacecraft. With that brief context, I would introduce the founder of FSOC, Mr. James Solomon, to enlighten us with the various use cases of FSOC and various undertakings of CTO-to networks. Also a time check, we are running 5 minutes before time, so please, Mr. James, if you can wrap up in like 10 minutes.
Thank you, Vinayak, for the same. Okay, I'll just start up with what CTO-to basically does. CTO-to not just builds FSOC products, free space optics products, but rather helps in developing use cases for defense, use cases for the existing private networks, and creating an infrastructure on its own in the next 3 years. So what is free space optics is, we use lasers to communicate using through long distances, send in data packets. The technology was already there since 1970s. Research was going on since companies have developed various international companies, global companies have developed various products on that part. Let's say for 1 kilometer, 800 Mbps, 600 Mbps was achieved. 2013, NASA used LCRD and then communicated using lasers from moon back to Earth. So that is some kind of promising things that we could see in the free space optics communication domains. We at CTO, we started to build these products like 3-4 years ago. We achieved in lab test results. Now we are commercially deployed. We are able to achieve from anywhere around 1 kilometer, 10 Gbps to 40 Gbps. Sounds like a futuristic part. We are going to 100 Gbps in the next 2 years, like a hub. And then we have achieved like 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers for 1 Gbps. What necessarily is a difference in this technology, in this wireless optical domain is, we are using light. So basically not the spectrum part. We are out of band, not using the spectrum. Licensing is not a part. It basically becomes like a common man's hedge. Common man is trying to achieve what is there in the network domain. Our major scope, or what we would be happy that we have achieved, is we are trying to make a pick and plant model so that every user tries to achieve this middle mile kind of networks. This is what free space optics domain is. So previously, now in the last 2 presentations, we have heard about what the E-band does or what underground fiber does. I'm sorry to just make a comparison chart on that part. This is what free space optics is on another domain. The equipment cost, the installation time. Installation time takes less than 15 minutes to be very precise. Aligning those lasers is a way too much fun kind of thing, and a technologically driven startup of our scale works in this technologies where government is already involved with us, defense is already involved with us. So every other thing what we are trying to achieve becomes a reality, because it was once a dream for us to achieve this kind of bandwidth in the middle mile connectivity. It's not an end mile solution, it's a middle mile solution, to be very precise. So this is the kind of thing that we are projecting to our partners. Imagine 2 data centers lying next to each other, and then you do not want to use your internet connectivity to sharing data using gigabits or taking 10 times less the time what is currently going on now. Use the free space optics products to generally align this and then send in your data using 10, 40, 50 Gbps, 100 Gbps of data. What we are necessarily doing is we are sending in all those data packets down in a frequency signal in a very closed and tight chamber, and then sending it across. The installation time is less, the information carried gets sooner. So imagine things like you're using virtual desktop infrastructures, remote desktop servers in mission critical situations. Also, the portfolio that we are trying to build in the next 2 years is the space domain, right, from the ground station to the GSOs. We have 4 space products as of now. I'll say what is it all about. The 4 space product, Cosmos and Cosmos 2, works on from ground station to low Earth orbitals, 400 kilometers, and then relaying the same signal from 400 kilometers to 400 kilometers, 600 kilometers, and then to GSOs up to 40,000 kilometers. This kind of things can become a future possibility in the intersatellite domain as well. Currently, Starlink is using the same technology, Minarik is using the same technology to connect intersatellite links and then projecting it back to the Earth. Imagine this kind of networks that you're going to see in the next way too much sooner, 3 or 4 years down the line, intranet capabilities. Let's go out from Web 2 to Web 3 or decentralize it to much more part. We need higher data bandwidths or throughput regions. This is the kind of networks that you would be liking to deploy. Your fiber optic cables would cost you a ton. Your other frequency things would be not working on a radio silence, but this FSOC works on clearing out all the barriers that was there in the middle mile network. Installation, fiber cables take 9 months for installation. Your free space optics takes just 15 minutes of installation time. And whereas your digging of the ground, underlying cables, this is a commitment. In free space optics, nothing is a commitment. You take out the box and then shift it to elsewhere. So rapid network infrastructure again becomes a possibility. You're not committed to one particular layout or one particular infrastructure or all those things. The barrier becomes of your cost becomes down by 3000% compared to the fiber optic cable. In a city like Pune, if you have deployed it for 6 to 7, mesh protocols actually help us to develop this free space optics meshing structures. It works on the same channels or the same protocols what the existing channels work. So you necessarily do not need to shift your end mile solutions or your kind of end mile deployments. This is what we are bringing onto the table. And not just citoto, there have been many others in the global market as well. But yeah, we are pioneering in the meshing protocols, in the structures, creating an intranet, decentralizing the whole network altogether. We have our own data centers in some parts of the city that helps in have free space optics as a backup or a storage network. So a storage network becomes a possibility. These are the various things that I wanted to highlight about what free space optics is all about and how we are pioneering in this situation, be it in the government defense or international partnerships as well. We have current 2 international partners across the globe that help us to distribute or procure for us any kind of help in other forces as well. By this, I'd like to thank Headstart and being a co-chair in Broadband India Forum in the startup and MSME. We are always happy to get any kind of technologies further. Thank you for the same. Thank you for the time. Thank you all. Vinayak, over to you. Yeah.
Thanks, James. We'll take questions for the final session. So we have a couple of questions. I'm just reading it out. Ventatapathy asks, what is the killer application for free space optics? I think that's for you, James.
Yeah. So the killer application for free space optics is the intranet or the decentralization of the in the end mile part. That would be the killer application. That is what exactly we are building. The data centers and everything contained for a particular application, let's say for a particular city of Pune or Mumbai, wherein they want to talk or they want to have communications, rather not going on the internet and having it on a less commitment basis. This is a killer application of free space optics.
Okay. So there are a couple of questions by Mukesh Keshwal. I'll ask the first one first. Anything on rain attenuation and on farming out for regional rain map to avoid technical challenges on microwave? Did your team have worked out on having the regional rain map better execution of the work? Can one of the panelists take this question?
I already responded on that, and typically we refer to the rain maps which are defined by ITU, but I think the question is more towards further refined regional rain maps. At least I'm not aware of any source which is providing this kind. But what we typically do during planning, it's purely a planning exercise. Typically we try and take one level worse rain zone when we are planning for any region, so that we are anyway covered from a planning perspective. So our availability, whatever we plan, is at least met. So that's what we typically do. I'm not really aware if there is any agency who's providing small region-wise detailed rain maps. At least I'm not aware.
Okay. Thanks, Bhuvnesh. I see that you answered the second question as well. So I'll take one more last question. By Sanjeeva Kumar, please share small info regarding the reliability to Indian terrain, cost per GB transmission network, range typically achieved at coastal environment. Please share small info related to reliability of the Indian terrain. I think the same question is posted twice. And I think this question is posted to FSOC. For FSOC. So James, for you.
Okay. The cost per GB transmission as of now, it's way too much cheaper than any of those things out there. The reason being the installation cost is less, so we can generally put down the capex and what is going on for the ROI to the OEMs as well. Cost per GB transmission, you can see very well to be less than 10 paise per GB in a region of 1 kilometer across the river or across any parts. So that is what the cost aspect is. To be said in words, if a fiber optic cable takes around 337 rupees per meter for installation, FSOC would take 7 to 10 rupees per meter for installation. This is what the cost cutting is for the end mile consumers as well. At coastal environment, again, if there are any data packets absorbed during the process, we make sure that we take, exactly said by HFCL, we take one zone greater than what is there in the actual scenario. So the packet loss remains a negligible problem for us.
Okay, great to hear that. So I think that's all the time we have for question and answers. And for delivering the closing remarks, we have Miss Divya Khemani from a support partner Meta with us. So let me give a quick introduction. So Divya is working as a growth manager at Meta. And prior to working at Meta Connectivity, Divya has worked with Vodafone for over a decade, with significant experience in building partnerships across technology innovations. Thanks to all the panelists for such informative. I know we had 2 hours, but it was very information dense. Information dense session, and with that, I think I'll have the closing remarks and a vote of thanks from Ms. Divya. Over to you, Ms. Divya.
Thanks, Vinayak. For this closing session, if I can just request the distinguished speakers to turn on their cameras. Thank you so much. This has been such an insightful session, as India has embarked on this journey of democratization of, Wi-Fi proliferation via PM1. I think it's really set the stage for startups to take the lead, to reimagine, the blueprint. Obviously, they will do this via technology and collaboration. You heard from this, great list of panelists that you see on your screen here on a bunch of technology advancements that are happening, be it open Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 6, FSOC right at the end. And obviously, it's no secret, that India is home to one of the largest startup ecosystem, right? So when you put together the startup ecosystem on one hand, technological advancements on the other, you have the recipe for success. You're bound to succeed. In fact, at Meta Connectivity, we believe that there is no single organization that can take on this mammoth task of internet proliferation on their own. In fact, you heard Bhuvnesh speak about this. Meta is one of the founding members of TIP, that's the Telecom Infra Project, which is a group of technology organizations that have come together with a common objective, to accelerate the pace of innovation with which networks are deployed. So I think this is no longer a pipe dream. Things are happening as we speak. HFCL spoke about how they've collaborated with TIP and with startups like I2E1 to make PM1 networks a reality in India as we speak. So I think I would just want to draw this session to a close by saying thank you. Thank you to each one of you for supporting this vision of empowering startups to think bigger, bolder, better, in proliferation of internet connectivity. A big thank you to all of the speakers over here for sharing your insights with us. And a big thank you to all the attendees. We want to make this movement bigger and bolder. We really appreciate your time and interest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you,
I'm just about to say that that's probably already been done, Divya. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a nice day and a nice weekend as well.